It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome to another tier list. This time we're doing MCU movies. I'm doing this because Spider-Man No Way Home comes out next week, which I'm very excited for, and thought, hey, why not do an MCU tier list prior to No Way Home coming out? So here we are. We're going to be going through these in order. I have decided to change up the ranking names to Spectacular being the best, Incredible right below it, Amazing being below it, Passable, and Forgotten. So essentially, it is an S to D rank listing. I just thought it'd be cute with the names. So essentially what I'm going to do is rank all of the MCU movies that have come out so far, none of the shows. We'll do that as a separate thing later when I finish a couple of them. But we're going to talk about the movies in particular. So I guess for background, for context of where this is going to go, I mostly, I've been watching the MCU since it started. I think I was probably more into it in Phase 1 and 3 than I was Phase 2. So you may see that reflected in the rankings. But for the most part, I think that me personally, I've been a fan of the MCU since it started, but I'm not like a diehard. I don't know the ins and outs of everything. So remember that in my personal opinions here, I may not be a super expert on the MCU, but I do enjoy it, and I do pretty much watch anything they put out. So there was that. And with that in mind, let's go through this. I have seen all these movies at least once. Some of these I have not seen a second time, but I didn't really feel like doing that just for this video. And there's some of these I've seen many, many times, and we'll discuss that as we go along. So, with all that said, let's begin with Iron Man. So Iron Man was the kickoff to the MCU, and honestly, I think it still holds up pretty good as a movie. I watched it a bunch when it first came out, and I haven't watched it much since. But honestly, I have good memories of it, and it still holds up as a solid film. So while personally I haven't watched it a ton recently, I'm actually going to put it in the Incredible tier, because I think that actually, as a film, it holds up pretty great, and is the building blocks of this entire universe, which is pretty dang cool. So the next one's going to be kind of interesting, The Incredible Hulk. Now this was kind of a weird spot, because the MCU was still kind of forming. It wasn't quite as planned out as it is now. And The Incredible Hulk was Universal wanting to make another Hulk movie, and at some point they decided that Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man would show up in a post-credit scene. And that's when this all started to get rolling. So while Iron Man started the MCU as a concept really got rolling with Hulk. And while Edward Norton didn't continue forward to play the character and we got Mark Ruffalo, I still really like the movie. I actually think that in terms of a solo Hulk film, this is the best one. I mean, it's between this and the Ang Lee Hulk, which less said the better. But honestly, as a solo Hulk movie, I think it holds up, and it does some really cool stuff with Hulk as a character, and especially the way that he fights, and a lot of the struggles that Banner and Hulk have, which I don't think get reflected as well in the later Avengers films. So, honestly speaking, and this is a legitimate, honest opinion, not just being contrarian, while a lot of people would rank this lower, I'm going to put this in the Incredible tier above Iron Man, because it's just a personal basis. There may be a little bias because I'm a big Hulk fan, but it's going where it's going. So next up we have Iron Man 2. I think there was a lot of anticipation for this movie. I was particularly looking forward to War Machine, because I honestly think comics-wise I'm a bigger War Machine fan than an Iron Man fan. But this movie's not great. It's not forgettable, because I definitely remember it, but I don't really find it to be that good. I'm also like, most MCU movies, even the worst MCU movies, are still better than a lot of Hollywood blockbusters. So that's why there's not just like a trash tier on this. But Iron Man 2 is going to go in the passable. But I kind of want to put it in the forgotten, because I really just want to forget the movie. Because I think that a lot of the problem with the movie is it sort of felt retready on the first film. It didn't really do anything that new, and it didn't push the universe forward significantly, because Nick Fury and Black Widow debut here, but the way they portray Black Widow is not great. So I'm gonna put it in passable. It's going in passable, even though I would rather put it higher or lower. I mean, but yeah, passable. All right. So next up we got Thor. Now, Thor, for a lot of people, I think a lot of people like the character of Thor better and how he's been reimagined in Ragnarok. Because definitely playing into Chris Hemsworth's natural comedy talent is a good idea. But for me personally, I still really like the older version of Thor that they had, where it was more the Shakespearean style, because I felt more Jack Kirby in a lot of ways. So while Thor, I think, is a movie that may not appeal to everybody, I actually think it's probably one of the best MCU movies. And I especially like the kind of fish out of water effect that Thor has when he first comes to Earth, which is actually pretty cool. And a lot of the more overarching like grand sets of Asgard kind of thing, I really really like. So again, this is going in the incredible tier. It's going to go above Hulk, but I actually a lot of these Phase One movies, I think they still hold up incredibly well. Speaking of Captain America: The First Avenger, now personally speaking, I think that of the completed trilogies like the Iron Man, Cap, and Thor, I think that Captain America has the strongest trilogy, and that's because it has really no weak movie, and I think it's because it builds up. I think that as we'll talk about with Thor, the second movies kind of fell off, whereas Captain America got better and better. So actually, Captain America: The First Avenger, I think it's a great period piece, a great World War II movie. It's nice to just travel back in time and work with that, and they do a lot of really cool visual effects work that I still think is pretty great. So I don't know if I like it more than Thor, but I did like it more than Hulk. So it's also going in the incredible tier. All right, the first Avengers. So Avengers, or Marvel's The Avengers, the hype for this movie was real, definitely, because they were just building up slowly, like one movie at a time. But they were throwing like Hawkeye cameos and Thor. They were ready to just do an Avengers movie. That was clearly the direction. And honestly, I think the hype of this movie was great, and I definitely remember having a good theater experience. But I think that over time, and it may just be because I've watched it a ton, it hasn't held up as well. So it's definitely not going in the incredible tier, but it's going to go in the amazing tier. I think it does deserve its amazing tier, and I especially like what the effect it's had on future things, like especially recently the Hawkeye series references stuff from this movie. It's a very important milestone in the MCU, and I've done a really good job following up stories of it. Spider-Man: Homecoming did the same thing, so it's going to go in the amazing tier. I just don't think I like it as much as the others, but it's still a pretty solid movie overall, even with all the Whedon-isms. Now we get to Phase 2. Like I said, I kind of fell off because I felt like Avengers was so big, it was like pivotal. And then Phase 2, I think right out the gate didn't hit strong. Iron Man 3 ain't a great movie. And I don't think anyone out there is going to argue with me on that. I mean, if you really love Iron Man 3, by all means, fight your battle. Comment section below. But I think I've only seen it once. I've had no desire to go back to it. I don't think it's great. The Mandarin stuff is brought up a lot, and Shang-Chi's done a lot to fix that, but that still doesn't solve the other problems of that movie, which is... I don't even remember. Killian was not a great villain, and I think that they had a cool idea of like what does Tony Stark do without the armor, but they didn't lean into it enough. And I honestly don't remember most of the movie beyond that. So, forgotten. It's the first forgotten movie, and it's going to get a friend, because Thor: The Dark World, as much as I love the first Thor, I thought Dark World, I know it's in the title, but it went too dark, and it loved fake outs. Boy, yeah, because I remember watching the trailers, and I was like, oh wow, look at all this stuff, this is pretty cool. And then in the movie, it's like, yeah, fake out, and I'm like, okay, one fake out, two maybe, 4 or 5 like this movie did. Bro, so yeah, honestly, Thor: The Dark World, I don't think I've ever seen it again since I first watched it, just like with Iron Man 3. I'm going to put it above Iron Man 3, just because it does have a good villain in Malekith, so there you go, Thor: The Dark World. Luckily, and this is interesting, because I didn't actually see Iron Man 3 or Thor: The Dark World in theaters. I waited till the Blu-rays, for whatever reason. But Captain America: Winter Soldier got me back into the theater for these movies, and Winter Soldier, I think, a lot of people say it's the greatest MCU movie. I don't agree. But it is an incredibly well-made movie, and I think that's really interesting that the MCU decided to do a political thriller. And it actually, honestly, is more of a spy movie than Black Widow, which is something we'll talk about when we get to Black Widow. Um, so I actually really like it. I like the dynamic, especially between Captain America and Black Widow. And they did a lot of cool stuff with Shield. It was funny because this movie completely like undermined Agents of Shield as a TV show, but that show ended up being better for it. So here you go. So Captain America: Winter Soldier. Like I said, I don't love it as much as others, but I will put it. It's going to go into incredible because it is a really great movie. Just a little bit below Thor because I really like Thor. Okay, so let's talk about Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this was seen as Marvel's big gamble. If in 2014 we knew what we knew with Eternals coming out in 2021. But anyways, so Marvel's big gamble because the Guardians weren't well known, even though the the Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning run in the comics was really popular. That's why they made the movie. It did end up retooling the characters in the comics, some for the better, some for the worst. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the movies. I want to say I didn't see this one in theaters. I want to say I saw this one on Blu-ray. And I know a lot. Yeah, that's right. I did see it on Blu-ray because I saw a lot of people hype it up. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like the greatest movie ever. And I hate when that happens. And I try not to let it get in my head because I want to approach a movie on my own. And I've gotten much better at that than I did before. But I also was like, I don't see why this is the greatest. But upon rewatching it, which, hey, that's a Phase 2 movie I rewatched. Upon watching it again, I actually think it is a clever movie. Personally, and this is just an overall thing with the MCU Guardians, that I didn't really realize until I was playing the Guardians of the Galaxy video game recently, which, by the way, the Guardians of the Galaxy game is completely awesome. It's great. I can't recommend it enough. Somehow Square Enix had so much bad blood with the Avengers game, and then the Guardians game was amazing. Good job, Eidos Montreal, especially. Anyways, point is, I didn't realize it until I played the game, that the thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way with the Guardians of the Galaxy in the MCU is that they're all incompetent, which is funny, but in important situations like one in Infinity War I can think of, it doesn't work as well. So while I'm not going to let that hold down the movie, I think the movie is good, but it's going to go below Avengers. Still in the amazing tier. As you notice, I haven't put anything in the spectacular tier because we haven't reached my favorite phase yet. We're almost there. Avengers: Age of Ultron. So this one's also, I think this one suffers from Joss Whedon being the director and creative influence, because a lot of his worst habits as a filmmaker, because he's a terrible person, come out in this movie, especially with the way that they approach certain subject matter like Black Widow and being unable to have children, is approached in such a horrible and dehumanizing way that I'm glad that the Black Widow movie kind of worked on that a bit. It's still canon, but we're going to kind of, make it come off less dehumanized. And overall, I mean, it did introduce Scarlet Witch and Vision, which are two of my favorite Avengers from the comics, and whose MCU versions actually gets much better after this. So it's still all right. I'm going to put it above Iron Man 2. Overall, was not a fan. The Ultron, I know people kind of liked how sort of cerebral and kind of jokey Ultron was, but I didn't like it. I really like Ultron as the deadly killer man, and I'm really glad that What If's Ultron actually is that. That's what I want from an Ultron. Not the movie. No offense to the actor, because he's great, but I think that the actor did a good job in the part. I just didn't like the part they gave him. So now we come to Ant-Man. This was the last Phase 2 movie. Ant-Man, I didn't see in theaters again. I think the only ones of Phase 2 I saw in theaters was... Oh no, I only saw Winter Soldier. Anyways, Ant-Man, picked it up on Blu-ray. Hadn't heard much about it. It was like, oh wow, they're doing an Ant-Man movie. That's kind of nuts, but they've been one in development for a while. And then I popped the Blu-ray in, watched the movie, and was like, wow, that's my new favorite MCU movie. So I'm putting Ant-Man in spectacular, because I have seen this movie about 8 times now, and I cannot get tired of it. And again, this is a personal opinion, but I think this movie is actually kind of brilliant, because one of the things it does, which we'll talk about later because it isn't as done well later. But the MCU choosing to start with Scott Lang Ant-Man and not Hank Pym was actually pretty cool because I think legacy characters in comics are one of the coolest things about comics after they've run for a long period of time. Yes, someone else take up the mantle. And I love the dynamic here that it's not like it is in the comics where Hank Pym and Scott Lang aren't that different in age. Where here they made Hank Pym much older, where it was he was working with S.H.I.E.L.D. and then Scott Lang steals the suit and becomes Ant-Man kind of thing. So you have that dynamic of here's Hank, he's old and grouchy, and he's got like family dynamic trouble. But then you have Scott Lang who's like bright and peppy and is like, yeah, just tell me what to do. And Hank just kind of hates him for a bit. It's a really cool dynamic, and I think that a lot of the movie, from a film standpoint, it is carried by Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, and Michael Douglas. They're dynamic, the three of them, especially the way they interact with Paul Rudd specifically, are just fantastic. And I think that, the overall film is really well put together. It's really well structured, and I really, really love it. And it is the reason why Ant-Man is my favorite MCU character. And it's also the reason why I started reading Ant-Man comics. So this is the thing. I'm a huge comics fan, but if a MCU movie can get me to start reading comics that I wouldn't have read earlier, wouldn't have read otherwise, that's impressive. So, props to Ant-Man. All right, next up we got Captain America: Civil War. Now this was interesting because it was really weird how Batman v Superman got announced and Captain America: Serpent Society suddenly morphed into Captain America: Civil War. I see you, Kevin Feige. I see what you're doing. Only 2 months later, it's like, I'm going to do that better. Turns out if Warner Brothers hadn't axed so much of Batman v Superman, it might have turned out better. But anyways, Captain America: Civil War actually has a really cool dynamic to it. And what I mean by dynamic is that this is a movie based on the Civil War comic. I don't like the Civil War comic. Marvel's Civil War comic's stupid. Freaking dumb movie. Or a dumb comic. This movie takes it, morphs it, makes it better. So with Civil War, you have Captain America and Iron Man on two opposing sides of, are we going to sign these Sokovia Accords where basically the U.S. government's going to decide what we get to do? And, Tony Stark's like, I got a bunch of guilt. I think accountability is good. Captain America's like, this is too much monitoring. How are we supposed to save people if we have to go through the channels? And that's a good debate because there really isn't a clear good side, bad side thing. And of course, Tony and Steve take it to the extremes of the conflict. But what I liked about it was that while you had the heroes, the Avengers, split up between Captain America's team and Iron Man's team, that split was nice, but the thing is there's no bad blood between people. Like Vision and Scarlet Witch end up on opposite sides. Hawkeye and Black Widow end up on opposite sides. And what's fun about the airport battle, because it's very iconic at this point, that the airport battles where they two teams come to clash. What's fun about it is the fact that I can watch it and enjoy it because in that fight, specifically, no one's hurt, no one's killed, and it's, heroes are fighting heroes, but they have reasons why they're doing it, but there's also not bad blood between them. Like, I think there's a lot of bad blood between Steve and Tony, but Scarlet Witch and Vision, Hawkeye and Black Widow, Captain America and Spider-Man, they have like these really fun interactions. Like Hawkeye and Black Widow, like Hawkeye has this one line to Widow. He's like, you actually have to punch me that hard. We can still be friends after this, right? Because they're on different sides of a debate, and the only reason why the fight is happening is because of Steve Rogers protecting Bucky Barnes from him being framed by Zemo. And I think that actually works really well as a movie. So with all that said, it's not above Ant-Man, but it's going in spectacular. I had a lot to say about that movie. I know I spent like a lot of time on Civil War, but I think it's an actually really fascinating movie to dive into. But that's kind of my general thoughts on it. I think that's what makes the movie work, is where, and I think that's where people came off as like Batman v Superman wasn't fun, but Civil War was. It's because Batman and Superman try Batman's trying to kill Superman, and Superman's trying to fight back. There's a lot of bad blood. Whereas with the Civil War, it's Steve and Tony got some bad blood, but everyone else is just joining either side based on how they think and feel. So I think that's actually pretty. It's like it was kind of like an argument with friends involving superpowers. So it was good, and everyone else kind of worked out better. Like Vision and Scarlet Witch got to go be happy together. So let's talk about Doctor Strange. So Doctor Strange was kind of hit me out of nowhere. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. I know the set photos came out, and I was like, ooh, those costumes. But then I saw them in action. I was like, ooh, those costumes. Once again, don't ever think that set photos are the end deal on something. But Doctor Strange actually is a pretty interesting movie. It's got kind of that it's got that MCU origin sort of formula, but it does twist and bend it a little bit. And I think that's kind of interesting, the way that they sort of set up the multiverse this early in, and now it's a big thing in the MCU. And I thought that it was really cool how, and I like this part of it, but like Stephen Strange is still a jerk. Like even after all of his accident and all the lessons he learned, he's still arrogant. And that's an interesting dynamic, 'cause I feel like that a lot of times in these origin stories, hero learns a lesson, hero's just a better person now. But while Doctor Strange is still going to do his job and be a heroic character, he's not necessarily going to be a nice guy. He's still incredibly arrogant, in a different way than Tony Stark. Like, Stephen Strange is super arrogant, which is why we have problems in No Way Home. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about No Way Home when I update this tier list, maybe in a year or something. But Doctor Strange, honestly, pretty great movie. One of the ones I'd put up in the higher tiers. It's going to go into Incredible. I know that tier is getting a little, loaded, but we'll fix that in a moment. All right, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, I'm actually of the opinion I like the second movie more than the first. This one actually I thought was really cool, and the addition of having Nebula as a main character and Mantis. I love Mantis. The character dynamics get mixed up that way, and I think that, it could have just been same team as the first movie, but throwing in Nebula, throwing in Mantis, it really adds to a lot of the storyline. And while I'm not a super big fan of the change to Star-Lord's origin to where he's now the son of Ego as opposed to Spartax's king, it's similar but different, and it starts asking questions about how Celestials work when Ego looks the way he does compared to how Arishem looks in Eternals. But anyways, the point is, Guardians Volume 2, I think it's a better movie. It has a very, very solid emotional core, and it does deal with, team dynamics and, friends and, if you're mean to your friends, will they still come back to you kind of thing. And it's a lot of story about family and what your true family is and what really matters in life. So I really, really like it. I think it worked out a lot better than the first. So for me, Guardians Volume 2 is going in the Spectacular tier, just below Civil War. It's probably going to stay at the end of Spectacular, but I could watch that movie multiple times. I think the first one I'd only watch a couple times, but the second one, pretty solid. So let's talk about Spider-Man. We'll be doing this again. So for those listening, if you're here this far, 23 minutes into the video here, I'll be doing a Spider-Man movie tier list on the day No Way Home releases. Little sneak peek there. And we'll talk about Homecoming and Far From Home in accordance to Spider-Man movies. But we're going to talk about them as MCU movies. So they changed the dynamics of Spider-Man. I love that we're not doing the whole origin again with the spider. And, it's kind of sad that Uncle Ben's not a presence, but, Peter has other mentors in the MCU here. And honestly, I think Homecoming's a pretty solid movie. It's got some rough edges, but I think as a Spider-Man movie set in the MCU, it's overall pretty solid. I don't really have anything else beyond that to add, so I'm going to put it in the amazing tier above Avengers. It's not quite incredible, but it's still up there. I do like Homecoming. I've watched it a few times. That one I've seen several times. So, remember Thor? Like I said, I think I somewhat preferred the Shakespearean Thor, but in terms of a movie, Thor Ragnarok's revamp of Thor made him a more fun character. And it kind of took saw the serious elements out, but this movie still goes really hardcore. There is a lot of death. Hela is so great because Hela is the example of when you write out on paper like what Hela is, it's like, oh wow, okay, she's like a one-note character. But Cate Blanchett adds so many layers to it. That's where where the actor improves the part. so well. And I think that's what the MCU needed. And same thing with Michael Keaton's Vulture. I think I forgot to mention that. Kurt Russell's Ego, Michael Keaton as Vulture, Cate Blanchett as Hela. Just back to back. That is, phase three villains in a row that just they take what could have been very one-note characters and elevated them. And I think that's what the MCU has realized, because its villains are starting to get, here's an incredible actor doing a simpler part, but that's what's enhancing it. So Thor Ragnarok, soundtrack is amazing. Love the use of Immigrant Song. Love the colors. Love the Kirby-inspired architecture. Love the fact the Hulk's in it, because getting him outside of a Avengers movie, I haven't talked about Hulk since. I mentioned that. I was like, oh, we'll talk about the other Hulk. No, Hulk is better in this movie than he is in probably any other MCU movie that's not the Incredible Hulk. Overall, Thor Ragnarok, super fun to watch, but also does have its own stakes to it, which I think is actually a nice balance. It's jokey, but it's not full-on comedy, but it's not full-on serious action. So it strikes a nice balance. And it's going in the spectacular tier. It's going to go below Civil War, above Guardians 2, but spectacular. Man, this makes me just seem like a Phase 3 shill, and I don't really care, because I really like Phase 3. Black Panther. This is a movie that means a lot to a lot of people, and I'm really, really happy it was made for that reason. The Black community, especially in America, needed this movie, and I think it definitely showed in the box office, and the demographic results is that this was the movie for the Black community. But in addition to that, it's a really damn good movie too, and that is what is amazing. It's the key example of representation matters, while also not being, we made it for the Black community, but we made such a good movie anyone can enjoy it, and that is what is amazing. I love when that can happen, because so many people love this movie, and it's so good. It's so good. And for me personally, I love it too. And Chadwick Boseman, God rest his soul, was so good in this part, and he was taken from us too soon. But I really love Black Panther as a movie. I am not going to hear anybody complaining about CGI. Shut it. The MCU's got plenty of other wonky CGI. It's par for the course at this point. I ain't hearing it, because the rest of this movie comes together so cleanly, so tightly, and gives us a very interesting villain. Black Panther is going just below Ant-Man, because Ant-Man's still my personal favorite, but it is spectacular. Now to piss people off. Avengers Infinity War. So I do like my comic book event crossovers from time to time. I've gotten tired of them in the recent age, because Marvel likes to be like, oh yeah, you want to read this crossover? Here, it's 28 issues. Hate that. Avengers Infinity War feels like one of those crossovers. Just cram everyone together and give them something to fight. And you know what? All the setup was done in the previous films. This is what everything was leading to. And it turned out an alright movie. Now here's the thing. As a piece of the MCU, Infinity War is incredible. As a standalone movie, it's okay. It's just okay. Because if you had none of the context, it's okay. But if you've got all the context, it's spot on. So for me, Infinity War is not going in the incredible or spectacular tiers. It is going in the amazing tier. Because I think that it's an incredible feat, and I am still shaking about that ending. That ending, I will never forget opening night, seeing Infinity War in theaters, and the ending of that movie happening. I have never, ever, ever been in an opening day movie theater and a movie end with a completely silent crowd who did not say a word through the entire credits, through the entire post-credits, and they walked out of the theater in silence. Because it shocked the audience that much. So, Infinity War, as a cultural event, amazing. Let's talk Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, as you know, I love Ant-Man. I don't think it worked as well as the first one, because I don't know what it was. I don't know what it is that makes Ant-Man and the Wasp not as good as Ant-Man, but I still think it's pretty good. I think a lot of people hate on the movie because it came right after Infinity War. you're wanting to know what happens next, and instead we're doing a little side story, which is great. That's what the MCU does best, as we'll see with, Endgame here. But Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, is still a solid movie. I still really enjoy it. It was nice to see Hope finally become Wasp, and I actually like the fact that Ghost and the Doctor that was played by Lawrence Fishburne were the villains of the movie, but not the evil, we're going to destroy the world, destroy the city kind of villains. And the actual resolution in the end was more from a emotional human-to-human connection as opposed to a big fist fight. And I actually really appreciate that. I think that more superhero movies should have that. It was kind of a more peaceful resolution type thing, and I really appreciate that. Now, it did come a little bit as a lighter fare after Infinity War, and I think that was kind of the point. I think they're like, look, we shocked your pants off with Infinity War. Here, have a fun movie while we work on the next one. So, Ant-Man and the Wasp, while I will say that it is not as good of a movie, for me, it'll go in the Incredible tier, right below Hulk, because I have enjoyed it quite a bit. Captain Marvel. So, this is a movie I actually kind of liked. It was, Marvel was slow to the let's get a woman as the lead in a movie. Really slow. Because DC beat them to it with Wonder Woman, and I think that's why Captain Marvel got made. Now, Captain Marvel also does the legacy character thing, like Ant-Man did, except I don't think it did it as well. So mild spoilers for a movie that's been out for like 3 years. So Carol Danvers in the comics is Captain Marvel. She's not the second, she's not the third, she's not even the fourth. All right, she's Captain Marvel. And in the comics, she changes mantles from Miss Marvel to Captain Marvel because her mentor, Mar-Vell, ends up dying from cancer. It's a very touching storyline. And that, I think, was kind of really cool because she's taking up the mantle not just to be, oh, now I'm Captain Marvel because he's out of the way. No, it was, I'm Captain Marvel now to honor his legacy. And then we also got Kamala Khan becoming Miss Marvel to honor Carol's legacy. So with this... So it's a different kind of legacy character. It's one that changed mantles. Now, I don't mind jumping Carol straight to being Captain Marvel, but Mar-Vell is not a character in this movie. Mar-Vell exists in the backstory, but the character, we don't ever really see more than like 5, maybe 10 minutes of Mar-Vell and Carol ever interacting, and I think that was a detriment because I think that part of what made Ant-Man work, especially with the legacy, was having Hank there, and eventually having Janet there with Ant-Man and the Wasp. You get that legacy. You get that legacy in the storyline. You get that mentorship. And I think that I think they robbed Carol as a character from having that mentor aspect because Mar-Vell isn't a real character in the movie. She's just there to exist as part of a backstory, and it's part of a mystery as opposed to being an actual character. So I think that it took what it had in the comics with like Mar-Vell dies and passes the mantle, whereas I think that Captain Marvel didn't get that as a movie, and I think that was kind of to the detriment of the film. I think that because of that, Carol Danvers lost a little bit of her emotional core because we never really got to experience that dynamic as to be the reason why she took up the name Captain Mar-Vell, or Captain Marvel, or Mar-Vell, right? So, anyways, that's the story there. That's like my thoughts. That's my biggest problem with the movie. It's my only real problem with the movie. So it's still gonna go. I'm not gonna put it in amazing. I'm gonna put it in passable because it lacked that emotional center. But I love the action sequences. Love the music choices. Love the dynamic with Nick Fury. Love the reason behind Nick Fury's lost eye. But yeah, I think that emotional core was the part that was missing. And I think that was a detriment to the overall character. So hopefully with the Marvels coming up, Carol can kind of get, I think Carol needs more moments to shine. Because I think she's an incredible character. And Brie Larson is an Academy Award-winning actress for a reason. So let's see if we can give her a part where she gets to use that acting talent. So, Avengers Endgame. This is the true culmination of everything. They kind of swerved us with Infinity War. I mean, not really. If you were paying attention to the announcements, when they announced Captain America Serpent Society. They announced Infinity War Part 1 and 2. It eventually changed to Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. The second most successful movie of all time, because Avatar cheats every once in a while by releasing itself in China again. But that's a 3-hour movie that made almost $2 billion. Really amazing. Like, studios shouldn't have any reason to go, like, you have to cut your runtime short. Like, look, Avengers did it. You have to just do the setup and the marketing. This was a movie so hotly anticipated, you didn't even need to put a trailer out. Could have just told us the date and time. That's pretty much what it was. Also saw that opening night. Really great with an audience. Saw it again that same weekend. And saw it again, I think, once it came out on Blu-ray. It's a bit of a long movie, but again, I don't know if it works as well as a movie on its own, but I think it works really well as a piece of the MCU, because if you've seen all the previous films, the movie becomes incredibly special. So I actually really like that. So Avengers Endgame, for me, where's it going to go? I'm also going to put it in amazing, because the feat of this movie is incredible. Just bringing all these actors together, all these characters together. By now, you either know it or not, the big final battle, it's really cool. The problem with the big final battle for me is it's very, very dark and gray. I wish there was some colors. Darkly lit scene is fine, but I don't know why everyone's colors got, like, dashed with, like, they lowered the color intensity. I understood the characters that were down by the rubble when things started, dust started flying, sure, but, like, everybody came through the portals, you're all, like, coming in all covered in soot. Anyways, point is, still an incredible battle, really well shot, too, but could have used some bright colors. Bright colors, especially after Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok spoiled me with colors. So yeah, honestly, it's going to go in amazing. I think that, again, if I'm ranking just individual movies, it is an incredible achievement. I do like it more than Infinity War, but that's because it does more payoff. And it sets up a lot of great stuff in the future here. So let's talk about Spider-Man Far From Home. So I don't know why people hate this movie, because honestly, it's probably one of my favorite Spider-Man movies. And I get it. Yes, they talk about Tony's death too much. I agree. That's like my biggest problem with the movie, but it's one of my only problems with the movie. The stuff Mysterio is brilliant. I never thought Mysterio would be done so well. Mysterio stuff is great. Tom Holland's great as Spider-Man. I still really like him as Spider-Man. Nick Fury in this movie is really fun. There was a lot of great twists and turns to kind of keep you on the edge of, like, oh, what's real? What's Mysterio's illusions kind of thing. And honestly, I really, really dig it. I think as a movie, it took what Spider-Man Homecoming did and then refined it, turned out a pretty great Spider-Man movie. So, Far From Home for me, it's going to go... Yeah, it's going to go into Incredible, probably above Doctor Strange. Yeah, I'm going to top it at Incredible there. Because I actually think that was the movie that really, it really elevated Spider-Man. I think it gave him a kind of a global threat, and it was one where he had to solve it on his own. I actually like that, because I think that, Homecoming, he got a big help from Tony in the new suit, but still had to fight Vulture on his own in his raggedy clothes, which was great. I like the way that ends. And I think with Far From Home, he had to kind of work on his own more by not having Tony Stark to rely on for technology. And I like the scene of him making his own new suit and Happy helping him out with that. It's good stuff. He relies on the people around him, but eventually solves his own problems. I think that that's my favorite part about the Tom Holland Spider-Man in the MCU, is the fact that, yeah, Iron Man shows up in the first one, Nick Fury's in the second one, Doctor Strange is in the third one. I'm assuming No Way Home has a similar theme because of the director involved, but Peter Parker, Spider-Man, has to solve his own problems. And it bugs me when I see people complain online that he always gets help, oh, he doesn't do anything by himself. I'm like, he defeated Vulture and Mysterio on his own with help from others, but he did that fight on his own. So he's still a valid Spider-Man. And that's where it's going. It's going incredible. All right, so Spider-Man happened. We were going to get, oh no Marvel movie for 5 months. Oh no Marvel movie for 18 months. Black Widow finally came out. And while I was initially excited, my excitement just waned, because I was like, you keep delaying it, okay, all right, Black Widow, sure, I'll see it at some point. And in the meantime, Black Widow got delayed. We got WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I was like, wow, these two shows were like more character focused, and I really like this. Why should we do solo movies anymore? They should just be, crossovers, because I really would just prefer to have everybody get, 6 hours of TV on Disney Plus instead, because they honestly turn out as better character works. And Black Widow came out, and it was kind of a team movie. And my problem with this movie is not that I didn't think it was terrible. I don't even, I don't know. Two things bug me. So first of all, I felt like Taskmaster was wasted, and I don't mind anything they did to change Taskmaster from the comics. Fine with me, no problem. My problem is that they didn't get to use the character that much. I felt like Taskmaster was hardly in it, and Taskmaster's a really cool concept of someone that can mimic everybody's physical abilities, and Echo on Hawkeye is doing similar things but better. So Taskmaster just kind of felt like a waste. I felt like, it was more of a setup. Let's set up Yelena Belova as opposed to let's explore Natasha Romanoff's past. And then the movie wasn't a spy movie. This part blew my mind a little bit. There are spy elements in this movie, but it's not a spy movie. It's really more of an action film, just like kind of an action film, more of a fugitive plot than a spy movie. Like, there are elements of spy movies in it, but the majority of it is more of a fugitive film, and that just seems weird to me. I think, personally, if I was told, oh, you're making a Black Widow movie, all right, let me do a spy movie, because that's kind of Black Widow's whole thing, the espionage. That was what really helped Winter Soldier, Black Widow's part in that. She was full-on spy, and in her own movie, she wasn't much of a spy. So, yeah. So overall, I mean, I don't hate it. I really don't. But it's not great. So I'm going to put it passable below Captain Marvel. Hopefully, the MCU can get its stuff together with a woman-led MCU movie, because I think that the first two haven't been doing great. But hopefully the Marvels will turn around, especially with Nia DaCosta directing. I really hope that works out. But yeah, Black Widow, yeah, wasn't a huge fan. I definitely missed the spy elements. Also, why was Natasha like a super soldier in that? She was like rubber. She'd bounce off stuff and be fine. Anyways, that aside, the next two movies I'm going to talk very lightly on because they are more recent. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So this was interesting, because I was like, all right, after Black Widow, especially, I was like, why do we need solo MCU movies? Because even though I wasn't a big fan of Loki, I still was like, there's so much more here than if Loki got a movie, and What If happened, and I was like, oh, dang. But Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, actually, for me, restored my faith in solo MCU movies, because this one took the solo MCU idea, took the same formula, but it expanded it and did a lot of great globetrotting, grand locations, heavy effects work, which you can do on streaming, but the grand cinematic flair to it, that's what it's called. Because the thing is that nothing in Shang-Chi, nothing in WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, or Loki matched up to Shang-Chi. Whereas I felt like Black Widow wasn't even as good as Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier had more interesting locations, more interesting action, and actually had more interesting plot. So Shang-Chi actually came around and restored my faith in the MCU, solo movies. It really did. And so I think that, for me, I know it's recent, but I've seen it 3 times now. It's going to go at the end of the spectacular. Oh, no. No, actually, I'm going to put it... Is it better than Thor Ragnarok? Yeah, it's going to go right there. I think it's going to go right there. I think Shang-Chi's, I think the third act visual effects got a little too CG, which they had really grand locations before. I love the character dynamics. Xia Ling is like one of the coolest characters ever. You know what? It's going above Thor Ragnarok for Xia Ling. Yeah, but Thor Ragnarok has Valkyrie. You know what? Xia Ling. Because manager Zheng, who played Xia Ling, it was her first film role, and she absolutely killed it. So, there we go. Shang-Chi is up that high. So, anyways, talking about movies, let's talk about Eternals. Now this, oh boy. Oh my god, I remember the Rotten Tomatoes score came out and people were freaking out. Oh my god, how could it have a 60%? And I was like, so many of you would never survive being a DC fan. Because, boy, there are DC movies I love and they get like 28s on Rotten Tomatoes. Oh man, I think this I'm actually we're gonna look at this right now. We're gonna go to Rotten Tomatoes. We're gonna go check what the current Rotten Tomatoes Eternals score is. Here it is. Here's Eternals. Let's click there. It's at 48. It's the lowest MCU Rotten Tomatoes score by a lot, because usually Rotten Tomatoes hits like a 97. All right, whatever. Rotten Tomatoes doesn't matter that much. What matters is your own opinions on movies when you watch them. So the thing is, I was like going into Eternals like maybe I'll love it, because I usually don't agree with the general critic consensus with a lot of movies, especially when it comes to DC stuff. And guess what? It totally feels like a DCEU movie, because it's dark. It's tragic. There's really interesting cinematography choices. The action is not the focus. It's more about the characters. And I actually liked it. I don't think I loved it. Definitely didn't hate it. I actually really thought it was kind of interesting. And it actually had more surprising twists and turns than I'd say most any other MCU movies. Though mostly because I was thinking in a marketing sense when I was looking at the characters. And some of those characters did not turn out the way I thought they would. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But Eternals, I think that it's not. And the reason why I looked at it and I was like, I know why this got such a low Rotten Tomatoes score. It's not a crowd pleaser movie. It is definitely more of an emotional journey, and it's more of a tragedy, which the MCU has never ever done. So I really appreciate its bold, creative choices there. So, where am I going to rank it? Well, this one's hard. I've only seen it once. I'm going to watch it again whenever it hits Blu-ray or Disney Plus or whatever. Where do I want to put it? Where do I want to put Eternals? This one's kind of hard because, again, I've only seen it once. It was about a month ago. Because I didn't love it enough to put it in spectacular or incredible. I'm kind of deciding if it's going to be amazing or passable. See, the thing is, the reason why it has such a low Rotten Tomatoes score is because, it's based on how many positive reviews, and the overwhelmingly negative reviews is how you get a 48%. And I think that's the reason why, is because I think that when people see an MCU movie, they expect to go in and have a fun time. People have said that the MCU movies are like theme park experiences, and as a theme park fan, I can't argue with that. They are, and Avengers Campus exists at Disneyland. So there is that, anticipation, and you kind of know what you're getting into. You're going to go have a fun time with a movie. And Eternals is not, I don't think Eternals is a fun time. I think Eternals is a more thought-provoking and existential time. Sort of like Loki. Anyways, so with Eternals, it's hard to rank it because it's so different than the rest of the MCU movies. Like I said, it feels like a DCEU movie, especially, just with the nature of it. But I found it so fascinating that I think I'm just going to put it dead center right here under Infinity War. And I know that's going to be controversial to somebody, and I really don't care. You can fight me in the comments. I think that's where it's going to go. So this is the official Soundout12 MCU tier list as of December 2021, not including Spider-Man No Way Home. I will probably do an update to this probably once a year, just to add in new movies and maybe change I'll start fresh. I'll re-rank them. I might rewatch some of these movies before I do that, but yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. So my top, let's do what the so from worst to best. So worst to best for me personally. Again, me personally, worst to best: Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, Iron Man 2, Age of Ultron, Black Widow, Captain Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers, Spider-Man Homecoming, Eternals, Infinity War, Endgame, Iron Man, Ant-Man the Wasp, Incredible Hulk, Captain America First Avenger, Captain America Winter Soldier, Thor, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man Far From Home, and the top 6, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Thor Ragnarok, Shang-Chi, Civil War, Black Panther, Ant-Man. So that is it for the list. Stay tuned for next week. I'll be doing a Spider-Man movies tier list. Far From Home and Homecoming might be in different places based on, again, Spider-Man movies as opposed to MCU movies. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And I don't really have anything else to add. I think that's about it. I will probably do an MCU TV show ranking soon. I need to finish Agent Carter. I know I'm like several years late on that boat, but I wanted to watch it for a while. I just haven't gotten around to it, but I'm committing January. Gonna start watching that. I also want to see Runaways and Cloak and Daggers. I think they kind of tangentially connect. But anyways, point is, I'm going to do an MCU series list sometime next year, and I think I'll do an update. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe December of next year. I know I'm like future plan. Maybe December of next year, if I remember to do this. All the MCU movies and shows ranked, and then add in all the stuff that comes from now until then. So we'll have She-Hulk by then, hopefully. Really looking forward to She-Hulk. Anyways, I think that's the plan. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and hit subscribe and the notification bell. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate everyone that does that, because that helps feed the algorithm beast to get my videos more recommended. And if you have any arguments, leave it in the comments and tell me what your favorite MCU movie is. I like to keep it positive, but if you want to get all negative and have a debate and call me a loser for putting, Eternals above Spider-Man Homecoming, or Eternals above Avengers and Guardians, fight me on it. I will debate you, and it'll be fun, and I don't mind whatsoever. So, on that, check out HeroClub at hero-club.com for your MCU news and more. We actually report on the MCU quite a bit over there. And also my graphic designer on Twitter, DarkClaw643. And until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.